Welcome back to Pokemon episode summary. Today, I'll be doing episode 117, a tense situation. The episode begins with Ash and the gang finally having made it back to right outside of Pallet Town. Despite it being Ash's hometown, Tracy was arguably more excited as he really wanted to see his idol, Professor Oak. Ash obviously suggested that Tracy should show Professor Oak a lot of his sketches, but Tracy was already 10 steps ahead of him as he had currently stopped in the middle of the road to go through every single one of his sketches to determine which ones he thought were worthy to show Oak. Ash is like, dude, maybe don't get out all your sketches in the middle of the fucking road. We can do that when we go back to my house, and we can have some good-ass fucking lunch as well. And Tracy's like, alright, so he packs up his shit, and they go to Ash's house, with Jigglypuff, who unknowingly boarded the ferry last episode, following them. When Ash and the gang reach Ash's house, Ash tries to mentally prepare himself for the fact that his mom was probably going to go fucking nuts when she saw him again. However, when he opened the door, he was met with nothing but a dark room. It seemed like no one was home, when suddenly he spotted a figure in the dark, and heard a familiar voice. It was none other than Brock, much to Ash's surprise. And Misty and Tracy's. And Tracy didn't even know who the guy fucking was. But that's right, Brock was back, baby. Ash was so shocked that he crashed into a wall, leading Brock to ignore him and simply greet Misty and Tracy, taking interest in if Misty's Togepi had improved at all. Before Ash and Misty can question Brock on why the fuck he was in Ash's house and back in Pallet Town when he was supposed to be on the island, Brock quickly offers them some tea and sits them down, stating that the tea was known as Indigo Oolong. When they finally manage to ask him why he was no longer with Professor Ivy, as we get a flashback scene to Brock's departure, Brock immediately falls to the ground and starts shivering and having a fucking mental breakdown, like he has like PTSD or some shit. So Professor Ivy must have done something to him, and Misty speculates that Brock confessed his feelings for her and he got rejected. And yes, that's probably what happened. Just then, Ash's mom arrives from in the garden and immediately greets Pikachu before her own son, much to his dismay. However, she does at least greet him before she greets Tracy and Misty, asking how Togepi was doing, and questioning who the fuck Tracy even was. Misty then asks Ash's mom how long Brock had been in Pallet Town and staying at Ash's house, with Ash's mom revealing that it has been a week at this point, and that she had found him when she was coming home from the store one day with Mr. Mime. They heard a strange noise, but initially looked back and saw nothing, so they walked a little further, heard the noise again, and they looked back and still found nothing. When they looked a third time, though, and walked around in circles in an attempt to find the source of the noise, they eventually found a cloaked man by accidentally stepping on him. And when Ash's mom took off the cloak, it was revealed that it was Brock. She apologized to him as soon as she stepped on him, and decided to take him back to her house and give him a meal as a true apology. And since Ash had told her that Brock had left for Professor Ivy's, she was confused as to why Brock was back in Pallet Town, obviously, but she stated that when she asked Brock about it, all he did was collapse and curl up into a ball and shiver like he did earlier. So that really indicated that something must have happened to him. I mean, he was found nearly unconscious in the grass. Fucking, I wish we knew what happened. But anyways, after Brock recovered, he immediately began to repay Ash's mom by doing a whole bunch of chores around the house, as that's what he was used to doing by this point, because he had done so much for Professor Ivy. But when he tried to do all these chores, Mr. Mime got mad, and it resulted in them not liking each other very much. Speaking of Brock and Mr. Mime not liking each other that much, they were actually fighting over who got to do sweeping, as Ash's mom was explaining the story. Ash was hoping that his mom's story would clarify why Brock was back, but it really just added more confusion. Like, what the fuck did Professor Ivy do to him? Misty told him that she was sure that it was obvious that Brock had been dumped, but Ash wasn't entirely convinced, as he somehow didn't even believe that Brock had feelings for Professor Ivy. When he tells this to Misty, she just fucking laughs her ass off, like, what, you really think Brock didn't like the hot professor? You're so immature. The immature comment already got Ash pretty mad, but when Misty states that Ash was more immature than even Gary, he gets so pissed off that he ironically goes into the same fetal position that Brock went into. So, I guess Ash's form of rejection was being compared to Gary. Ash soon recovers, though, as his mom suggests that they make some deep dish chili dog pizza pot pies. Seeing that Ash was better, Tracy takes the opportunity to try and ask Ash a question. However, Ash just ignores him out of pure excitement for the chili pies or whatever the fuck they were called. He starts to go on and on and on about what extra toppings he wanted on his and shit, and this pisses Tracy off, who just wanted to ask one fucking question. So he yells like, shut the fuck up, Ash, and this causes everyone to just stare at Tracy, shocked that he actually had the balls to say something like that, leading Tracy to get embarrassed and apologize, but explained that he was just trying to ask Ash a question, being, can they go to Professor Oak's fucking lab already, because he was desperate to show Oak his sketches. Being reminded of the lab, Ash is reminded of the entire reason why he went to the Orange Islands in the first place, which was to retrieve the GS ball, so he pulls it out with the intention to give it back to Oak. He also pulls out his Orange League trophy in the process, and gives it to his mom, so that she had something to remember him by whenever he was gone. Ash's mom didn't intend to use it as a memento, though. She had other uses for it, such as using it as another dumbbell, as she complained that she only managed to find one, and now she would finally have something heavy enough to act as a second. Alright then. Everyone gets distracted as they watch Ash's mom start lifting weights and the trophy, leading Tracy to just get frustrated and demand once again to just go to the fucking lab already. And finally they do, with Brock heading along with them. He was now part of the gang again, let's go. Tracy and Brock then have their first ever real interaction, with Tracy asking Brock if he was as excited as he was when he first met the professor. Brock doesn't understand that Tracy was referring to Professor Oak, and thus curls up into a ball at the supposed mention of Professor Ivy. When Tracy clarifies who he was really talking about, though, Brock says that yeah, he was excited. Maybe not as excited as Tracy, where he was fucking busting his nuts waiting to go, but he did admit that Professor Oak's lab was one of the best in the world, and that really interested him, especially due to being a Pokemon breeder, and Oak having all those habitats. Hearing about these habitats makes Tracy even more excited to go to the lab, so he rushes ahead of everyone as they all try and keep up. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang in some bushes, with James remarking that now that their time in the Orange Islands was done, they should give a status report to Giovanni. However, Meowth is against this, as he reminds James that they've caught 0 Pokemon throughout their entire career, let alone just their time at the Orange Islands, so a call would only make Giovanni more mad. Team Rocket then goes back to spying and spot none other than Brock, questioning why the fuck he had returned. While Ash and the gang were on their way to Oak's lab, it turns out that Ash's mom had gotten tired from doing some dumbbell lifting and decided to just use the trophy as a memento after all, placing it on the TV stand. Anyways, Ash and the gang then arrived at Oak's lab, but when they went in, they couldn't find him anywhere. They only found Muck, who came rushing out of one of the rooms and immediately smothered Ash, in excitement to see him, causing Ash to scream. Professor Oak heard these screams and came rushing out of his office, only to get smothered by Muck as well, as they were both Muck's favorite people, Ash and Oak. Tracy takes an interest in Muck's weird behavior as he begins to sketch the professor being absolutely flattened by Muck at this point, with Ash stating that taking a sketch right now probably wasn't the best idea. Tracy then proceeds to excitedly introduce himself to Professor Oak, but Oak takes more interest right away in Pikachu and Togepi, asking how they were holding up. He then gets up off the floor and complains about how much Muck's smothering was ruining his already old body, when he spots Brock and informs him that Professor Ivy had left Oak a message regarding Brock, telling him that she gave him her best regards. Brock obviously doubted this, as he proceeded to curl up into a ball yet again. Who knows though, maybe Brock was overreacting after all. If Professor Ivy was still willing to give him her best regards, it must not have been that bad. Tracy then reminds Ash of the GS ball, leading Ash to apologize for how long it took to get it to him, with Oak assuring him it was no problem, as he was going to look at it during the night anyways. I don't know why he just didn't examine it right now. I mean, I'm sure Ash was curious as to what was in it, but anyways, he decides to bring it into his Pokeball storage room, which amazes Tracy, because he's never seen it. So Oak essentially gives him the rundown of the stuff that Ash already knew about the room, being that all of the Pokeballs belong to trainers from Pallet Town, and then takes Ash and the gang outside to show Tracy some of the Pokemon habitats. While outside, Ash spots his Snorlax, who he remembered he had dropped off at Oak's lab, and it was currently eating some apples from a tree, and immediately fell asleep afterwards, so it didn't even get to greet Ash or nothing. Tracy then notices a cloud of dust form in the distance, and realizes it was being caused by a herd of Tauros. Tracy questions what the Tauros were doing here and why there were so many of them, with Ash revealing that he had caught that many back in the Safari Zone. This then reminds him that he still currently had one of the Tauros on him, and he releases it back with the other Tauros. Ash then briefly sees his only other lab Pokemon, being Kingler, as it quickly greets him and then jumps into a pond. As for what Tracy was doing while Ash was chumming with his lab Pokemon, he was still busy sketching, this time sketching a picture of Ash's Tauros, taking an interest in them. Fortunately for Tracy, Oak then took an interest in him and asked him what he was sketching. This led Tracy to go on a rant about all the sketches he'd done, and how he wanted Professor Oak to take a look at them, wanting his idol's opinion on his best work. Oak agrees to take a look at them, much to Tracy's delight, though he has trouble narrowing down what sketches to show Oak, as for one, he doesn't want to embarrass himself by showing bad sketches, and two, he didn't want to bore Oak by showing him too many. He really just wanted to make sure that Oak liked him no matter what. While Tracy picked out the sketches, Oak made everyone some tea, and they then went back inside as Oak looked over the ones that Tracy had picked out. Tracy should have spent some more time preparing mentally though, as soon as Oak looked in his sketches and didn't immediately say anything, as he was busy taking them all in, Tracy began to panic, assuming that Oak didn't like him, and he got so nervous to the point where the entire sofa that he was sitting on started to vibrate, almost spilling Misty's tea, leading Ash and Misty to tell him to calm the fuck down already, like damn. When Oak was finished looking, and Brock saw that Tracy was still looking down in nervousness, he took the opportunity to whisper to Oak, to ask him what he thought of Tracy's sketches, because he wanted Oak to reply in a whisper, in case Oak said something rude and made Tracy fly off the handle in shame. He didn't want to experience Tracy's dismay. Thankfully, Oak did as Brock wanted, whispering his opinion of Tracy's sketches into his ear, but then Tracy noticed this, and began to get stressed that meant that Oak didn't like them. Thankfully, Tracy's potential meltdown was cut off when Ash and the gang then heard a loud rumbling sound. This rumbling sound was caused by none other than Meowth hitting a button from inside the Meowth balloon. That's right, Team Rocket was by the lab, and they had a plan to steal both Pikachu and all the Pokemon from the lab. Ash and the gang looked out the window to see what the rumbling caused, and it was revealed that Meowth's button press had caused a huge circus net to completely engulf the Pokemon lab. Team Rocket's balloon was above the Pokemon lab, currently occupied by Team Rocket, who taunted that now the Pokemon in the lab, as well as Pikachu, would not be able to escape, now that the lab was engulfed in this huge-ass circus net. It was revealed, though, that Pokemon couldn't get into the net either, as Jigglypuff, who had also arrived at the lab, was mad that it now couldn't get inside because the circus net was blocking its entrance. As Ash and the gang debated how they could get out of the circus net, Team Rocket then came in from their balloon, busting a little hole through the top, just big enough so that they could fit through, and nobody else. When they arrived, they immediately performed their motto, doing a circus act, on a tightrope in a whole bunch of costumes. After finishing their circus act, they rip off their circus clothing, and immediately questioned Brock as to why he was back with Ash and the gang. Apparently that was their biggest concern. Unfortunately, they weren't going to get much of an answer, as they mentioned Professor Ivy while they were questioning, and the mere mention of Professor Ivy's name, of course, made Brock curl up into a ball. And even stranger this time, he fucking went up to Team Rocket's tightrope somehow, grabbed James' parasol that he had from one of his disguises, and just curled up into a ball on a tightrope. What the hell? Weirded out by this, Team Rocket decided that they didn't really care about what happened to Brock that much after all, and demand that Ash hand over his Pikachu, and Oak hand over all the Pokemon at the lab, and then they would leave, you know? It would be a fair trade. Ash is like, fair trade, yeah, fucking right, bitch, and goes to send out his Bulbasaur. However, he notices that Muck wanted to battle, as it was probably tired of just sitting in the lab all day, so Ash lets it. Jessie sends out her Lickitung to battle Muck, although Muck goes straight past Lickitung, being more interested in Jessie herself, as he smothers her. Oak explains to Jesse that Muck didn't seem to be interested in smothering Pokemon, only humans, clarifying that he would smother almost any new human that he found, insinuating that Jesse wasn't special. James then tried to actually battle the Muck by sending out his Victory Bell, although that just backfired on him as usual, as Victory Bell ate him. Victory Bell was then forced to release James, though, as Muck then smothered both James and Victory Bell. Without having James in its mouth, Victory Bell actually tried to do an attack, being a Razor Leaf, but Muck simply absorbed the leaves due to its slimy body. Victory Bell being Victory Bell couldn't go without something in its mouth for long, so it then tried to attack Muck by sucking on it like it did James, and he manages to get essentially Muck's entire body into his mouth. Like, holy shit, that's the throat go right there. James and Ash both then order their Pokemon to use poison gas, and this just results in Victory Bell getting double poisoned, as not only does it get poisoned by Muck's poison gas, but it gets poisoned by its own, as it's unable to release the poison gas from its mouth due to having Muck inside. This causes Victory Bell to spit Muck out, freeing it, but then Lickitung goes in for an attack, licking Muck. However, this does absolutely nothing to it. Meanwhile, Jigglypuff, still unable to get inside the lab, then spots a mysterious cloaked figure walk up next to it. Back to the battle, Victory Bell had since recovered from its poisoning and used sleep powder to put Muck to sleep, with Ash surprised that Muck actually got defeated, as he was doing super well. Ash was also just surprised that Team Rocket was able to actually get a win off of him for once, but he wasn't panicking too hard, as he was just going to send out Bulbasaur and Squirtle. However, before he could, Team Rocket then threw some of the leftover rings from their circus act, and they acted essentially as ropes, tying up Ash and the gang, stopping them from moving, along with Professor Oak. With Ash and the gang stuck in place, Team Rocket took the opportunity to descend a huge vacuum from their Meowth balloon, and use it to suck up all of the Pokeballs in Oak's lab, along with Tracy's sketches in the process. Oh yeah, I'm sure Team Rocket really wanted those goddamn sketches. But anyways, for some reason, the GS ball isn't immediately sucked in to the vacuum, and while Team Rocket are waiting for it to go in, they take the opportunity to go up to Brock and ask him yet again why he was back. Brock responds, you guessed it, by curling up into a ball yet again, once again going on the tightrope with James's parasol, despite still being tied up. I don't even know, I'm not going to question it at this point. Finally, the GS ball is sucked into the vacuum, leaving Ash and the gang to panic immensely, as they had fucking went to the Orange Islands just to get that ball, and now it was going to be gone thanks to Team Rocket. In a Deus Ex Machina moment though, the circus net then suddenly rips open, thanks to the cloaked figure and his Nidoqueen. Thanks to the circus net being ripped open, this lowers Team Rocket's Meowth balloon, as it was attached to it, and it also sends Jigglypuff flying in the process, as Jigglypuff was trying to get in, and the figure walked over it. Team Rocket don't initially panic when the circus net was ripped open, as you know, they poked a little hole in it to get in, they thought it'd be fine, but this hole was a lot bigger, and it caused the entire circus net to collapse, freeing the lab. With the Meowth balloon having collapsed due to being attached to the circus net, this causes all of the Pokeballs that were inside the vacuum, along with Tracy's sketches, to become free as well, as the vacuum gets destroyed when the balloon crashes. Team Rocket were in shock at how quick their plan was foiled, but this shock paled in comparison to how shocked Ash and the gang were, as the mysterious figure took off his cloak, revealing himself to be none other than Gary Oak, baby. Yeah! Gary wastes no time ordering his Nidoqueen to attack, and his Nidoqueen proceeds to grab Lickitung by its tongue and throw it at Team Rocket, and then use a Mega Punch on Victory Bell, sending Victory Bell flying into a tree, knocking into the rest of Team Rocket. Meowth scolds Jesse and James for their Pokemon failing, leading Jesse to say to Meowth like, oh, if you think it's so easy, then you go battle, as she grabs Meowth and throws him out to battle the Nidoqueen. He proceeds to scratch it, but this just results in his nails being completely fucked, rendering Meowth unable to attack, so the Nidoqueen can take the opportunity to use Strength and throw Team Rocket into the air, sending them blasting off. Nidoqueen then frees Ash and the gang and Oak from their ties by using its horn, leading Oak, Brock, Tracy, and Misty to thank Gary for his help and state how much stronger he had gotten, being able to solo Team Rocket like that with a Nidoqueen. Ash gets jealous about the attention that Gary was getting just for beating Team Rocket, as he informs Gary and reminds everyone else that he won the fucking Orange League, and also rubbing it in Gary's face that he made it farther than him in the Indigo League. Gary simply laughs though, admitting that although it was clear that Ash had gotten better to be able to win the Orange League, Gary was still confident that he could beat Ash no matter what, as Gary had gotten better since the Indigo League as well. And he also added how Ash winning the Orange League didn't help him with battling Team Rocket. Ash should have rebutted this though, as he's beat Team Rocket plenty of times. Thankfully, instead of arguing back some bullshit to Gary, Ash decides to settle the argument by finally having that match that they were going to have at the Indigo League. Gary accepts, and the battle is about to begin. Who will win? Find out next time on Pokemon Ball Z. Also, the finale of Season 2.